Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Fujan.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Inner Voice Show. I'm Dr. Fujan Zain. I'm a psychotherapist and the author and the originator of the Awareness Integration Theory. And hello to Sean, our director in our studio. This is a show about what matters most in our life, our minds, our thoughts, feelings, actions, relationships, and our fulfillment in this beautiful journey of life. So today, I will share with you the tip of the week about living life, being connected, and then I'll share my view about what happened at the Oscars last night. From a psychological perspective, then a research about the effect of social media and on our teens in different ages. I chat with Alan Cox, a mental health change maker and the developer of the Ever Yellow app. And don't go anywhere. I will have an announcement to make at the end, so listen up to the end, all right? And please subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast and connect with me through all of the social medias. All of them are with Dr. Fujan Zain. I'd love to hear from you, but first, here's the tip of the week. Here's the tip of the week. Have you ever felt disconnected and even at times dissociated? Most people's answer is yes, they have. Being disconnected can happen due to a lack of interest in a subject or a task, or actually a person. Usually when people get bored with the subject or lose interest in the topic, or if they don't agree with the subject, or are not interested in debating it, they take their attention away. It could be due to preoccupation with a subject, another subject. If someone is problem solving, contemplating, or analyzing, they tend to put their attention and energy fully on their mental task. So while they're sitting at a dinner table with a family or watching a movie, a part of them is fully engaged in an internal process. Therefore, they're pretty much disconnected from their physical space. Others disconnect due to being overwhelmed by an emotional uncomfortableness with a situation. If there are conflicts they have to face, if they anticipate a fight, or any form of emotional uproar, they tend to shy away and disconnect. Some disconnect due to attempting to control their anger so that they don't lash out. Being physically and mentally tired will also create disconnection to preserve the small amount of energy that is left to handle their daily task. At times, one disconnects from one thing but is fully present to another. And at times, there's a need to disconnect from the outside world and just go within to recharge. Many use disconnection from a part of their body as a form of pain management. Dissociation, on the other hand, is disconnection from one's body and self, which usually appears during a trauma. When one has experienced utter powerlessness and helplessness, the anxiety of facing death, not being or being harmed, the pain in the body from it being abused, assaulted, raped, all of those forces the person to disconnect from their body and at times from themselves as they know it, from the self who they know themselves as. Some refuse to connect with their body after trauma. They end up also harming or abusing their body. Some even mutilate their own body parts to feel pain and remind themselves that this body is theirs. Dissociation is used as a coping mechanism to survive. As long as the person is still living in a situation where abuse and trauma are going on, dissociation helps the person to hold on to their ego strength and survive the situation. It's a way to prevent psychosis almost. However, continues as an automatic way of existing even when the person no longer lives under those conditions. The younger the person and the length of the time that one has endured a trauma determines the depth and severity of their dissociation. Healing the trauma is the key to coming back to the body and therefore connecting with the present moment fully. I've had the privilege of working 30 years with clients who have gone through trauma such as childhood, physical and emotional, mental, and sexual abuse. Worked with veterans surviving the actual war, but not the one in their head. The worst domestic wars, which happens at home from your mate. It takes healing and integrating the dissociated parts of the self for a person to fully experience livelihood and fulfillment in their life. There are times that disconnection is necessary. The disconnection and the distinction of when it is useful to be utilized versus disconnection being a to-go-to coping mechanism automatically is important. To live an intentional life where you can be present, feel, experience life requires you to be in your body, to be present. Your presence, your attention, your interest, your willingness to be open and receive all information are all necessary components. You deserve to experience your life fully. You only get one life. Experience every moment of it fully. This is why you're alive and here on earth. For more observational and integrational skills to become fully present and whole, get my book, Life Reset, the awareness integration path to create the life you want. Thank you for listening. In the Ask Me segment, anyone who had watched the Oscars last night or haven't watched it, but just been bombarded with the conversation of Will Smith getting upset with Chris Rock making a comedy joke. He was a comedian, so he made a joke about Will Smith's wife. The way her appearance was, or it seemed like at the time that he was stating the joke, that the audience were all laughing and nobody really thought of it as that Chris Rock was being inappropriate. Even Will Smith at the time, as you see it, he's laughing at it because he doesn't feel like this is really harsh. However, his wife was taken back and felt hurt by that comment. And then Will Smith got up in public, walked in, smacked him, and used very offensive words stating that take my wife's name out of your mouth. And although Chris Rock was a bit shocked about all of that, it seems like he continued doing what he needed to do at the stage. Afterward, Will Smith, in a very emotional, apologetic way, stated what was going on with him, what was his intention, and apologized to his peers who were sitting there for this act. So a lot of people have started to ask what was going on and how does that happen? And I think a lot of times when we're vulnerable, we act based on our emotions. And sometimes we're not looking at all of the other aspects of how it impacts. There was a lot of conversation about how can we be loving toward each other. And What are the things that we do in order to protect each other under the name of love? And then, do we give ourselves the right to react because we're trying to really protect? Um, are there times that we're actually going to take anything that other people say and there's public humiliation, and do I just, in the name of being professional or being someone in the realm of public eye, and I just have to take it because other people are being humiliating or demeaning, and should I take it, or should I publicly also come back and humiliate them back? There are a lot of questions. Our social media is going haywire with all of the people who are taking different sides on this. And that's what we do as human beings. We take sides. I know that for me, as I was watching, what was happening was I was also feeling emotional and maybe looking at both sides and how hard this might be for both people and whomever is in this situation. So not necessarily talking about what was going on with them, because I don't know, and I don't think anybody knows except who they are. But I know that when sometimes we are in the process of being in a power, or think that it's okay, or as part of our game, or as part of our conversation. And I know that being a comedian, being an actor, being someone, a lot of times, even CEOs in meetings, people who all have a space where they can show themselves. Sometimes they're not necessarily looking at the impact of their words, or the comedy that has, or the power that shows up with their words. It becomes more important, the possibility of the impact that might have for other people. So there's an angle to really watch for any of us who are in any position, who have the ability to have listeners, whether we are in social media, or we are in the eye of the public, or even if you are in a meeting at work, or even if you were a parent at your dinner table with your children. I think it's important to extend this type of understanding and responsibility and accountability, that whatever shows up and comes out of my mouth is going to have an impact. And I can choose the impact. And although I might want to have some power or some laugh or some attention, um, who's getting hurt in here? And it might be that it's important for me to look at the relationship that is going to get created by me stating something. And then on the other hand, can I also have a reaction and then justify it just because I was upset or trying to protect a loved one? Can I go and justify act of violence and say, well, I was protecting someone? So again, if I need to protect someone, if I need to take a stand for myself or anyone, is there another way of doing it which would be more appropriate than the act of violence? So those are the responsibility and accountability of the way that we behave toward the world, and the impact. I love the way that Will Smith tried to clean up and bring himself into showing us his vulnerable part, talking about him being overwhelmed. And I think for any of us, when we do something that maybe we're not that proud of, for whatever reason we've done, the beauty is to be able to clear it, to be able to share what was going on with us, because we all can be in a vulnerable time, and we can all come from a place of reacting from one side of us, and at that moment not looking at all the other angles. So coming clean and taking responsibility and accountability for what we've done, there's a beauty in that. And I think that everyone is watching, when we see the vulnerability of people in front of us, and especially people who have been in our lives in different ways, that the element of forgiveness shows up for us, the element of empathy shows up for us. I think we've all been there, one side or another. We've all somehow have ever experienced, it's just like Chris Rock saying something that maybe we really weren't intending to harm, but it did harm someone, and we got a consequence for it. We've all been in a place of, uh, you know, um, a time that we've been humiliated because we're just sitting there minding our own business, and somebody suddenly says something that humiliates us publicly, and we feel hurt. We've all sometimes been in a place that we've acted in a particular way, whether it was violent or inappropriate for a setting, because we were coming from an emotional space. And then we also had to pay the consequence. And I think if every one of us looks at how this is so real and any of our experiences, maybe we could hold compassion for everyone involved and look at the ways that we can be actually going towards the loving of self and others, and coming not from a violent place. And even if we're taking a stand for ourselves, take the stance from power and not reaction. Thank you. Here's the latest research. Girls and boys might be more vulnerable to the negative effects of social media use at different times during their adolescence. In a study published today in Nature Communications, the researchers show that in UK, United Kingdom, data, girls experience a negative link between social media use and life satisfaction when they are between 11 to 13 years old, and boys when they are between 14 to 15 years old. Increased social media use again predicts lower life satisfaction at age 19. At other times, the link was not that statistically significant. In just over a decade, social media has fundamentally changed how we spend our time, share information about ourselves, and talk to others. This has led to widespread concern about its potential negative impact, both on individuals and on the wider society. Yet, even after years of research, there's still considerable uncertainty about how social media use relates to well-being. A team of scientists, including psychologists, neuroscientists, and modelers, analyzed two of the United Kingdom data sets comprising of 84,000 individuals between the ages of 10 and 80 years old. These included longitudinal data, that is, data that tracks individuals over a period of time, on 17,400 young people aged between 10 to 21 years of age. The researchers are from the University of Cambridge, University of Oxford, and Donner's Institute of Brain, Cognition, and Behavior. The team looked for a connection between estimated social media use and reported life satisfaction, and found key periods of adolescence where social media use was associated with a decrease in life situation. 12 months later, in the opposite direction, the researchers also found that teens who have lower than average life satisfaction use more social media 1 year later. In girls, social media use between the ages of 11 and 13 years was associated with a decrease in life satisfaction 1 year later, whereas in boys, this occurred between the ages of 14 and 15 years. The difference suggests that sensitivity to social media use might be linked to developmental changes, possibly changes in the structure of the brain, or to puberty, which occurs later in boys than in girls. In both female and male, social media use at the age of 19 years was again associated with a decrease in life satisfaction a year later. At this age, it is possible that social changes such as leaving home, starting work may make us particularly vulnerable. At other times, the link between social media use and life satisfaction 1 year later was not statistically actually significant. Decrease in life satisfaction also predicted increases in social media use 1 year later. However, this does not change across age and or differ between sexes. Dr. Amy Orban a group leader at the MRC Cognition and Brain Sciences unit in University of Cambridge, who led the study, said that the link between social media use and mental well-being is clearly very complex. Changes within our bodies, such as brain development and puberty, and in our social circumstances, appear to make us vulnerable at particular times in our lives. Professor Sarah Jane Blackmore, professor of psychology and cognitive neurosciences at Cambridge, and the co-author of this study, says it's not possible to pinpoint the precise process that underline this vulnerability. Adolescence is a time of cognitive, biological, and social change, all of which are intertwined, making it very difficult to disentangle one factor from the other. For example, it's not yet clear what might be due to developmental changes in hormones or the brain, or what might be down to how an individual interacts with their peers. Researchers state with the findings, rather than debating whether or not the link exists, we can now focus on the periods of adolescence where we now know we might be most at risk, and use this as a springboard to explore some of the really interesting questions. I have been facing and talking to a lot of parents and adolescents who are going to major anxiety episodes, a panic attack, obsessive compulsive disorders, a lot of depression, and a lot of them due to excess use or inappropriate, let's say, use of the social media, and even internet search. So it's important for all of you who are parents, who are grandparents, educators, teachers, to know how to talk to the teenagers and adolescents, how to monitor their use, how to be a guidance with them and through what they're going through, and open the path of listening to them and having some conversation. Because the concept of they should just not use it is no longer applicable, or it's going to work. So it's a matter of how to use it and how to be with it as they get caught into some of the drama that happens for them, and how and if they put themselves within that drama in that age. And it really calls for another level of crisis. So I think these type of research really support looking at and giving us the education of how to be with our adolescents. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Dr. Foojan Zain, and I'm excited to have Alan Cox with me. He's a mental health change maker. Yes, a mental health change maker on a mission to change the narrative around mental health and help millions of people achieve mental fitness. Alan has now devoted his life to helping millions of people become mentally fit and strong. And a crucial part of his mission is creating a fantastic new mobile app, Ever Yellow, that helps you build mental fitness enjoyably and easily. Welcome to the show, Alan.
It's my pleasure to be here. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited about what you're doing. And I know that you have gone through a lot yourself. And sometimes when we go through our own hardship, not only that we have the experience of, when we're vulnerable, when we're powerless, and at times even hopeless. And I know that you've gone through those. And then as we find the resiliency and the growth and, the stamina and the courage and all of it to kind of work on ourselves and bring us up. That because we've gone through the path, that we have a little bit of a more understanding of what it feels to be on both sides. And it seems like you've brought that and, sharing it with people in the way that you know. So first, tell us about you and what you have gone through to then find, to create this kind of motivation of now wanting to share with people from a place of mental health rather than illnesses.
Yeah. Well, I guess my kind of journey started as a very young child. It was quite a traumatic upbringing. There was nothing kind of really terrible, but at a time when you're growing up and you need nurturing and love from your parents. I kind of had the opposite from that, right? And that takes a toll, right? You instead of you growing up and your brain is kind of wiring your life around you being a lovable person. You form a mindset that kind of suggests that you're not. So so I probably because of that, I struggled through school, with relationships and that kind of thing. Would get into trouble, and that in my adult years, that kind of started to really kind of play out. I think the older you get, you start putting on more of an act, right? You have to act a certain way to go to work and things like that, right? And this kind of veneer hides that inside you're kind of crying and screaming a lot of the time, and that now looking back, I see that that ultimately takes its toll, right? And there's been times where there's been major depressive episodes, and just when it seemed like I was getting my life back together, I was I had a major back injury because of an accident at work, and that was bad enough on its own, but that also kind of shattered my dreams of what I was intending to migrate to New Zealand. Ultimately that did happen, but at the time I thought all my dreams had gone as well. And look, there's a number of these big episodes like that, and the last one was about 10 years ago when here in Christchurch, New Zealand, we had fairly major earthquake here, and I come very, very close to being killed in that. And again, instead of taking the time I needed, I had to kind of put on this act to I was running a company, I had people that needed me, and that ultimately led in me having a major mental breakdown. I could hardly walk, I could hardly talk. I could only function awake for about hour and a half, 2 hours at a time. That's about as bad as it got, really. And thankfully, I managed to turn things around soon after that.
And what worked for you to be able to turn around when you were at the lowest place that your mental capacity and emotional capacity could take? Because it just seems like at one point the ego strength just broke and just dissociated, disconnected, even from your body, even from your body functions at one point. So what brought you back? The step-by-step concept that you were able to actually find the resiliency to step back into your body, to your system, and moving forward.
Yeah, so I guess to put there's a very interesting story around this, and to put the story into context, it's kind of good to kind of explain your mindset when you're in that situation. And at that time I had just really no concept really of what was going on in my brain. I just accepted that I was one of those poor people that has a messed up brain, and that's it. That's my lot in life. I didn't understand about the mechanics of your brain, neuroscience, anything like that. And my analogy for how I felt at that time was just like being in a completely dark tunnel where I just didn't know which way was which, and there was just no way out, right? And what actually happened is I later found out it was my wife that actually there was a program that she put on the TV. It was a BBC program called The Truth About Depression, and I highly encourage anyone to watch it, because whether or not you are depressed, or I think it's an amazing program to understand what's going on in your brain. And anyway, she put this on, I guess just thinking it might help in some way. And what that program did is it showed me a number of things that I just didn't know before, right? Like it showed me that, like, just for one example, that because of the life that I'd been through, my hippocampus is probably 20% smaller than like what it should be. And that means like these things will happen in my brain, and the way I think and behave will change. Number one, it showed me that the way I was feeling wasn't really because my brain and I was broken. It was more of like it made sense to me, right? And the second thing is it showed me that actually there's a pathway to normality, right? And going back to that analogy of being in the tunnel, a light came on at one end, like it wasn't a big light. I didn't suddenly go from being terribly unwell to being well, far from it. But I got that sense of there is a way, right? And it was really that led me on my path of discovery, really, And so, yeah, I mean, people say that, like, I drew on my resilience and things like that. I just don't see it like that. I think all human beings have an innate desire to live, right? But the trouble is most of us just don't have the knowledge and the skills and like learned behaviors to live properly. And really it was that program that kind of gave me that sense of, right, well, let's do this, in the words of Nike, just do it, and that's where it started.
I think you're talking about a very important fact. First of all, when we do have information, then we find the agency to go and do something about ourselves. When we don't have the information, we are lost and we just get scared. So in the midst of having information, obviously, we get to choose in what is the next path that we want to take. And then you can make that choice. And I'm hearing that based on watching that program, you guys got an insight about, all right, this is what's going on in my brain. And these are some of the behavioral perspectives that I can do. These are the steps that I can do. And the more that you did those steps, the neural networks got connected. And then, you by your behavior, you allowed the brain change to happen, and vice versa. And it kind of goes back and forth in the infinity concept. And it seems like at one point, then you decided, oh, if this works for me, if information works for me, if I can shift who I am based on, in receiving information and other aspects that led you to the app, creating the app for everybody else.
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. I think the, again, if you permit me just to give a bit of context there, the app didn't come till many years later, and that at the time when I was in recovery, I remember being given kind of a booklet by my care workers, right? Or like a plastic folder with all of these leaflets in. And one of them was like all of these apps that I could try. And I tried pretty much all of them, and they were all hopeless, right? They were dry, they were clinical, they often made me feel worse. They required me, they was suggesting things for me to do that I just didn't want to do. You know, like when you can barely function for a couple of hours and you can't drive, it's not very helpful to hear something say, go and take a walk in nature, right? You know, I can't do that. So I already knew that like there's a real disconnect with what people really need and what's being provided. And I think it was about 5 years after the event that there was just all of this media around the rise in mental health problems, people like Avicii and Anthony Bourdain committing suicide and things like that. And that's when I kind of decided I want to do something. And I come from a long background in design thinking and what have you. And I really felt that there was really two really important things that I wanted to do. Is first of all, I wanted to create an app that actually works. I needed it to be something that isn't just being created for a money-making idea, or it actually makes people kind of grow, and is really easy and enjoyable for people to use, and that's what we set out to do with Everyellow. And we've had that in the app stores now for just over a year, and in the last year we've been hyper focused on just making sure that it really works for a wide variety of people, and we're kind of really delighted by just how effective it is, and the kind of feedback we're getting. It's I must say it's kind of exceeded all expectations, which I'm really pleased about.
Why call it Ever Yellow?
Well, yellow is the color of happiness, right? It's the color of, it's the and it's so I kind of always think that the sun is always there, right? Whatever you're going through, the sun is ever there, right? And it's not about being always happy, because that's not the goal. But Ever Yellow is that kind of aspirational thing that whatever you're going through in life, there is always yellow there, right? And there's always happiness to be found.
So what could people expect when they subscribe to Ever Yellow?
So the app experience is actually really beautiful, I think. To kind of put it into context, imagine two different audio streams. One is a series of different people speaking different things, but they're speaking in a way that they're connecting with you as an individual, right? And then the second stream is the backing music, right? Now, both of those streams we generate every single time you press play, so you never hear the same thing twice. But here's the thing: what you're listening to is tailored to what you need as an individual. When you first download the app, we take you through a very, very simple questionnaire that takes about 60 seconds or so to complete. And in that, we understand how your well-being is across a range of different measures, like your relationships, your ability to stay present, how often you experience flow, that kind of stuff, all related to positive psychology. And so we get those measures, and we also get to understand your personality type, which is incredibly important. Because, like, just to illustrate the point, imagine you've got two people with exactly the same well-being profile, but one is a driver and the other one is analytical. The analytical person, if you as a counselor talking to that person, the analytical person, they want detail. They want to know why are you telling me this? Whereas the driver, they don't, detail will frustrate them, and they just want to know what to do, right? And similarly, if you imagine you've got two people that are both, say, amiable, and you would speak to them both in exactly the same way, but they have two completely different well-being profiles, right? Again, you would give them very different content. So that's exactly what we do. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback we get is that when people listen, it just really connects from the get-go. Like, it really feels like the people that are speaking to them know them, and it's and that's what we've designed it to do.
And you said that you've taken concepts from positive psychology and you have added that piece. What was it about the listening part that you incorporated that you thought it was important to connect?
Yeah, well, I'd already studied things like psychoacoustics and how sound and music can really help to. Well, it does a number of things, but it really helps to concentrate on the messaging while, if you've got things going on in your mind, with the music right, and then listening to the messaging, it basically connects a lot better. It's just a nice experience, right? We wanted to make it really enjoyable, right? And the phrase mental health app and enjoyable aren't usually two things you put together. But the other really big thing we wanted to achieve was something where you literally can use it in any situation. So we wouldn't encourage you to use it while you're doing brain surgery, maybe, but the idea is that we have people that say we'll use it to and from work while they're driving home, right? Other people will use it while they're doing the dishes and or while they're walking the dog. We really encourage people just to tie it to an existing habit, so it becomes a habit. And yeah, that was the other problem I found with all of these other apps is you've got to find a desk to go and do writing, or you've got to find a space where you can not feel weird when you're meditating or something like that, right? And so we've even built in technology where you can slide down the vocals so that you can kind of barely hear them. The theory is called supraliminal theories, when your brain can hear the messaging, but you're kind of distracted by other things. And what that basically means is you can effectively get the therapeutic value of listening to Everyellow while you're working and while you're studying. And you can listen for hours like that, or you can listen while you're sleeping. And look, we are far off from kind of making any grand medical claims about that, but let's say that we've had a fairly strong amount of feedback from people that have only used it in that way, and they come to us like all excited and surprised by, you know, that they tell me their story. Like there was one guy that said that it was an accountant, right? And every so often, work would start building up. And when work starts building up, he would get stressed, and the stress would cause him to be less efficient. And then what he said was within a few days or so, he'd be down the rabbit hole, and he'd probably have to call in and take some time off. But he said, like, I've been using Everyellow for a couple of weeks now, and this happened again. You know, work started building up, and then all of these messages came back to me that said, like, oh no, just do this, just do that, look at it this way, or whatever the messages were. And he said, and I didn't go down the rabbit hole. I'm fine. I'm carried on. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. Thanks very much for sharing your story. He said, no, that's not the bit I'm excited about. He said, I can't believe how it's worked, because I've never listened to it with the voice up, you know? And so, yeah, we're getting lots of stories like that. So that's quite exciting.
Beautiful. And how are you doing in life?
I'm like, I think you've always got a way to go, right? I use the analogy, like, if it's a gross oversimplification, but if you think of well-being as being like a spectrum between, say, 1 and 10, right, where 1 is you're in a very bad place, and 10 you're probably floating off the floor or something. What many people don't realize is that the vast majority of people are around a 5, 5.5, and our data shows that really clearly. I would probably say that I'm somewhere between an 8 and a 9. So I'm like that. It's not. I don't say that just because of the way I feel. It's the way it's basically, I now have a wiring in my brain that allows me to function in a way that I never could before. And I'll give you an example that literally just happened. It was yesterday, and I was walking to work. I take my dog to work, and this guy in a car just jumps out of the car, comes up to me, and is like really angry looking, and is offering to fight me, right? And I think, like, for most people, and certainly me before, I would have been shaking. I would have had huge anxiety. I would have, and that fight or flight thing and all that kind of stuff. And I was just able to calmly look at him and say, no, I don't want to fight you. I just kept it real cool. And he went away, and I then walked away, and that incident was gone. I didn't think about it anymore. And that is an example of, like, the kind of power you get, and
I call it a Teflon effect. It's like nothing's
yeah.
anything kind of goes away.
Yeah.
If you, Alan, we have 1 minute for you to share something that we haven't shared and you really want everybody to know about you or about the app.
It's kind of hard to share one thing because you kind of don't know where everyone's at, right? But I guess the main thing to share is I'd really love people to just take a look at where are they at really, right? Go online and look up, say, positive psychology, and there's like 6 principles, or depending on what site you get, where you can kind of measure yourself against where are you in terms of having positive relationships in your life? Where are you in terms of all of these things? And really knowing where you are, I think, is the biggest first step to knowing where you could be, right? And I've seen the data, right? Most of us aren't in a great place, right? And I just think that if we move everyone up a few notches, and hopefully Everyellow will play a part in that, but if we can move everyone up, it just will benefit not only the individuals in their own enjoyment of life, performance, and what have you else. It's gonna help the world, right?
Yes, absolutely. Alan Cox, everyone, and the app is called Everyellow. And is it in App Store, Apple Store, and the Android?
It is.
Both. All right. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Alan Cox. Remember, everyone, go to the App Store or your Android and get Everyellow app, and get yourself from maybe a number of 0 to 2 or 3, all the way to 8 and 9 of happiness and fulfillment. It was a joy to have you in our show, Alan.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. Don't go anywhere, everyone. We'll be right back.
Everything was changed. Nothing stays the same. Yes,
well, sometimes, as you know, an era of life completes and another era begins. It's been 4 years that I have been with KMET 1490 AM. I felt honored. I feel so privileged when one day, as I was having my show in LA Talk Radio, that Bill and Bern called me and said, we want you to be on our radio program. And I was so excited. And about 4 years ago, I started this program here. And I've had a lot of great conversations with people and met Sean, our director, and it's been such a joy. And as life changes and my focus goes into creating the awareness integration theory into the different phase and opening and starting the Fujan app and having to really rearrange life as it is, I have decided to complete our show in KMET 1490 AM and FM. I will still have my show on a podcast. So I really ask all of you to follow me on my podcast, A Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Fujan, and you can get the podcast in all of the places you usually get the podcast, from Apple or Android or iHeart or anywhere that you get it. And it's just another era will begin. I want to thank the KMET 1490 AM for having me on their program. I hope that it's definitely been a joy for me and for all of the listeners who are part of the radio listeners. I want to share with you what a joy it has been for me to be part of your life as you have allowed it to be. And I hope that you continue to be part of my life and continue subscribing and following me on my podcast. The format might change a little bit. However, I would still be in your life one way or another, just not in this format anymore. So, Sean, thank you so much for 4 years of amazing work and supporting me and everyone else at KMET 1490 AM. I love you all. And for all of you who are out there and have been listening for so many years to me and my guests, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you will continue enjoying as you follow the podcast. You can always find me. My website is fushanzane.com, and you can always go to any of the podcasts and Find me there, Heartfelt Chat with Dr. Fujan. Create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. Take good care. Bye-bye.